You can hit record. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Want to welcome you to this virtual federal grants workshops. This workshop is being put on by Southern SARE in partnership with Wealth Watchers of Florida and Fort Valley State University and Tuskegee University. So thank you for coming, and we hope you will learn a lot over the next 2 days. So day one today, we're just going to be covering all of the federal grant programs that are out there for small to medium-sized farmers and nonprofits that serve them. And then tomorrow we'll be doing a deep dive into how to write effective grants. I just want to introduce my co-moderator, Carrie Davis. Carrie, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Carrie Davis, President and CEO of Wealth Watchers Incorporated. We're located in Jacksonville, Florida, but we have a footprint in Northeast Florida, Southeast, Southwest, and Central Georgia. And we, through our agriculture line of business, we work with producers, we work with landowners, we work with farmers, but we do community development, housing development, small business development. So just comprehensive community development in rural and urban areas. So we're excited to share with you over the next 2 days.
Thank you, Carrie. Terrence Wolfork is handling all of our IT today. He's with Fort Valley State University. And I guess we have everything covered, Terrence. The only thing is, how do people ask questions? Is there a chat box somewhere that we can see?
So everyone can either go through the chat box, or you also have a Q&A box on your on the bottom of your monitor. You can submit questions that way also. Okay, let's everyone use the Q&A box, and we will try to answer questions as they come up during the session. So once again, this is a federal grant workshop. We'll be going to right around 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, 1:30 Central Time. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So the reason why I want to do this program is because in a lot of formats and a lot of my interactions, especially with farmers of color and organizations of color, there's always some question about what grants are out there that they can apply for to help them either in their farming operations, or if they're a nonprofit, to help them deliver services to their constituents. And I just want to do this overview because in my work as the Southeastern Outreach Coordinator for Southern SARE, I just find that a lot of our folks don't know about these programs. So, you know, knowledge is half of the battle in accessing these federal funds. I will start out with saying that you should not make grants your be all and end all. Think of it as starting capital. And also, and you should learn how to build some ongoing sustainability into your programs or into your farming operation. So what are grants? Grants are monetary awards provided to eligible organizations by the granting organizations to meet specific objectives that are laid out in the grant calls. Most people like grants because you don't have to pay them back. And that first sentence is very important. You have to make sure that what you're wanting to do fits in with the mission of that grant program. So for example, you wouldn't apply for a farmers market promotion program grant to get a high tunnel, because that's not the function of that grant program. Same way you wouldn't go, in most cases, to NRCS to apply for funding to do educational programming, because that's not their missions. Most of the grants that we're going to be talking about today are accessible by universities and colleges, nonprofits, tribal authorities, governmental entities, and agricultural cooperatives. With a few exceptions, grants are typically not accessible by for-profit entities, and only in a few cases can farmers directly access grant programs. And we'll be talking about a couple of those programs today. All of these grants are contained and funded through the Farm Bill. And if you don't know what the Farm Bill is, the Farm Bill's, and Laurette, you help me out here. Is it every 4 years or every 8 years? The Farm Bill.
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years? Okay, every 5 years, Congress gets together and appropriates the Farm Bill, which contains just about all of the funding for agricultural work in the United States. And in the 2018 Farm Bill, we had some good things happening for small and medium-sized farmers and organizations. We got permanent baseline funding for many grant programs. Some grant programs, if the Farm Bill expired, they had to wait until a new appropriation cycle in order to get funded. We saw some increased funding for some programs, such as the 2501 program. Many programs put in a simplified application process for proposals under $100,000. Within the last Farm Bill, there was a development of urban agriculture and youth agriculture education departments within the within USDA. Those were two areas that had not been giving any serious attention. You know, one of the things I heard, we don't fund enough in urban ag. And one of the things, as many of you who do this work across the country, is that there's very little out there to help fund youth education around agriculture, with the exception of 4-H and FFA. But if you were looking to start to train young folks younger than 18 around agriculture, there just wasn't much out there. And many of the details still need to be worked out. These are the major grant programs that are out there, and we're going to be talking about most of these today. So you have Memphis Programs, which includes the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, the Food and Nutrition Service Grant Program, which is EBT and SNAP, which funds projects that increase the availability of organizations accepting SNAP at venues such as farmers markets. They award anywhere up to $100,000 to $750,000 to do this work. You have the LAMP program, which is run by Agricultural Marketing Services, which includes the Farmers Market Promotion Program, the Local Food Promotion Program, and the Value Added Producer Grant Program. You have Southern SARE, the organization that I work for, has 7 different grant programs. And then you have the Office of Advocacy and Outreach, which is 2501 program. So we're going to be talking about most of these during the course of this, this presentation today. The LAMP program is a new umbrella program that actually consolidated 3 programs: the Farmers Market Promotion Program, the Local Food Promotion Program, and the Value Added Producer Grant Program. It's a very important program for farmers. You know, in my work around the Southeast, a lot of people don't even know about these programs, but they can be very important for farmers and communities and for nonprofits. Like I said, it combines several programs, existing programs, into one, into a single local agricultural market program. These are extremely competitive grant programs, and I prepared these slides some time ago. The estimated funding was around $35 to $40 million. I think that may have been changed with with them consolidating. I'm pretty sure it's a little bit higher. And this is some of the stuff that the local agricultural marketing program is designed to fund. So things like farmers markets, roadside stands, CSA programs, processing, aggregation, distribution, and storage of local and regional food products, business development and feasibility studies, marketing studies, strategies for producers of local or regional foods, and producer safety, infrastructure, and practice upgrades. So the first one of these programs we're going to talk about in the LAMP program is the Value Added Producer Grant Program. It's run by Rural Development, or administered by Rural Development, and is designed to fund projects that facilitate the development of value-added products. And that just means taking a raw agricultural product and turning it into
something else. So taking strawberries and making it into strawberry jams. And with that, before I go any further, I'm going to turn it over to the expert, Ms. Lorette Tucker, who works with rural development up in Virginia. So Lorette, I'll let you tell the people a little bit about yourself and then explain a little bit about the Value Added Producer Grant Program.
Well, good morning, everyone. Brennan, thank you and all of your partners in putting together this federal grant workshop today. My name is Lorette Tucker. I am a rural business specialist with USDA Rural Development. USDA Rural Development, sister agencies to the Farm Service Agency, Natural Resources and Conservation Service, is typically involved with those programs, guaranteed loans or grants, that will actually provide economic stability for rural areas. So our programs only work in the rural areas, and those programs run the gamut from housing programs to the business programs, which is the division that I work in, to your multifamily housing projects, and to your community facilities and water and waste projects. In our business division, we have 13 or 14 programs. We have many grant programs where your nonprofit entities, your towns, your counties, your municipalities, or your private nonprofit entities can actually apply for. As Brennan said, rarely do you find grants that can assist profit-making businesses, but we do have two. And the two programs that I'm going to briefly talk about today is first, the Value Added Producer Grant Program, and producers, agricultural producers can take advantage of this program. And then I'm going to briefly touch on the Rural Energy for America program that also assists agricultural producers and rural small businesses. I apologize for not having a PowerPoint presentation, but if one is needed, I can certainly get it out, Brennan, to the group. So I'm going to get off a video because I really don't want you guys to see how much I love this program and how involved I get when I'm describing it. So I'm going to click off right now and get into my presentation. So the Value Added Producer Grant Program, what does this program do? Basically, the Value Added Producer Grant Program is going to help those agricultural producers enter into value added activities. So if there's a producer that is growing or raising a commodity and they want to expand their revenue, increase their customer base by going into value added activities, this program could possibly assist them. So the eligible entities that can apply are your independent producers. Those could be your sole proprietors, your mom and pop operations. They can actually be legally formed businesses, LLCs, LPs, etc. Farmer or rancher cooperatives can apply for this program. And those are the groups that have been formally set up as a cooperative by state statutes. Majority control producer-based businesses are another eligible entity type, and that's basically an entity where the majority of the control, the majority of the ownership of the commodity, the majority of the financial decisions is made by an agricultural producer. And so those are the eligible entity types. Now, when these entities apply to us for this value added producer grant, they are doing one of two things. They are either saying, hey, we've been raising our naturally grown beef cattle for years. We sell them at the stock market, but we want to now start processing that beef into cuts of meat. And they would, and if it's particularly if it is a venture that they're not really sure about, they don't know if there are customers that would purchase it. They don't know if there is a local processing facility that would be conducive for them to take their animals too, they could apply to us for a planning grant. What that planning grant is going to do is allow them to determine through a feasibility study if it is feasible for them to pursue this venture. If it is a venture that they are already doing, they are already selling their cuts of meat, or they are already selling their vegetables locally, they can apply to us for working capital. Working capital would allow them to pay for those operating costs that is essential to only the processing and only the marketing of that value-added product. Planning grants, the maximum would be $75,000. That has changed. And working capital, $250,000 is the max. These are matching grants. So the applicant that applies to us must show that they have that amount of money that they're applying to us for in matching. Matching can be cash. It can be a combination of cash or in kind. If the applicant is actually providing in kind through their time, then 25%, as Brennan has on his slide, is the maximum that we can accept in kind. Brennan has already said that this program last in fiscal year 2018, I believe, was consolidated under the local agricultural marketing program. Rural development still has the responsibility of processing and servicing these grants. On the planning side, some of the eligible costs include the hire of an outside third-party consultant that's going to conduct that feasibility study to see if your value-added venture is worthwhile. On the working capital side, eligible project costs include supplies, travel, website development, any type of advertising the business would need to do. What is not eligible is agricultural production activities, vehicles, machinery, equipment, constructing buildings, retrofitting buildings. So we're looking at soft cost items for this particular program. Very important to this program is a definition of agricultural producer. So the intent of this program was to help, or is to help, those producers that are actively involved in the day-to-day operation of the business. So the applicant that applies, we're looking for someone that is involved day-to-day. They have their hands in the dirt. They're in the fields. They're making the financial decisions. They're totally 100% involved in the business. And so an agricultural producer must be directly engaged through substantially participating in the labor, the management, the financial decisions. Typically, when it comes to this program, one definition is very clear, and that definition is change in physical state. So in this value-added producer grant program, applicants have to meet a definition, or their product has to comply with one of the definitions. Change in physical state is primarily what we see, although it's not the only definition of value added, and it's the easiest to describe because it is changing from one state to another. That's when you're going from your grapes into your wine, or your whole cow into the cuts of meat. It doesn't have to be a food product. You can have your sheep and you're making socks, you're making wool. Another definition is produced in a manner that enhances the value. So if any producer is a certified organic producer, their commodity would meet the definition of value added. No other change would be needed. Another definition is a farm or a ranch-based renewable energy. So if you are a dairy farmer and you would like to use the byproducts of your cows to put into a anaerobic digester to create methane, energy, that too would be an eligible value added definition. And then finally, locally produced food product. So if you are producing a food product and you are processing and you're marketing that food product within 400 miles of the farm, then that food product could meet the locally produced food product definition. Applications for this program would come into the state offices. The applications are scored by someone from our state, and it gets 2 other scores. So it's very important when you're putting together these applications. I won't tell you that it's a 3 or 4 page application. I wish it was, but it's not. You want to make sure that you are describing your project to a T, even if it means reiterating, even if it means writing to an audience that, well, let me say this. Businesses know their product, and sometimes when they write as if the reviewer knows it. But even if it sounds elementary to you, make sure your applications are easy to read, easy to understand. And I say that because the person reviewing an application from Virginia may be from the Midwest and may not understand what's grown here in Virginia. So you want to be very, very clear. And it's very important because these applications are scored. They are competitive. So no state gets an allocation. All the money is kept at our national office. So you're competing against other projects from other states. So you want to make sure that you're concise and you're very, very clear. There is a center in Virginia, the Virginia Foundation for Agriculture, Innovation, and Rural Sustainability. It's abbreviated Virginia FAIRS, and they have been instrumental in assisting applicants put together their grant proposals. So there are priority points for applicants depending on where they fall: beginning farmer and ranchers, a socially disadvantaged applicant, or small or medium-sized farm, rancher, or veteran farmer, or rancher applicants. They would get priority points in this program. Applications and deadlines. This program is typically announced through a NOSA. That NOSA has not been published yet. We were informed that it's in its clearance processes. We expect a 90-day application window. When it is announced, you can contact me if you have any questions about this program. If you want application materials, we don't expect any changes from last year's program. So we can always provide you last year so that you can get familiar with what would be required for this year. I did want to reiterate one thing that Brennan said. While this is considered free money in terms of not having to pay it back, the applicant that applies will get a 1099. So it is considered income for your business. So you just want to keep abreast of that. How you handle that is certainly between you and your accountant, but we always like to let applicants that are awarded know. And secondly, while you don't have to pay this money back, most grants carry with it obligations for reports. And this program is no different. So we would require reports at least twice a year while you are actually going through the grant process. And the grant process can be up to 3 years. So when you make application, you have up to 36 months to utilize the grant money and your matching money. So that entire time, we would require reports. And then at the end of the grant period, we would require a final report. It's very important in these grants that you would track your program income. So any income that is earned as a result of this grant, we would expect the applicant to keep up with it. So switching over quickly to the Rural Energy for America grant program. This program is available to rural small businesses or agricultural producers. In the Rural Energy for America program, if the entity or the applicant would like to install a renewable energy system, such as a wind turbine, solar system, geothermal system, or if they would like to make energy efficiency improvements. They want to replace something old and inefficient with something new and efficient. For example, poultry producers may want to replace the lighting in their poultry house or replace fans, curtains, insulation, etc. This program could possibly assist them. The Rural Energy for America program. That program is a grant and or a guaranteed loan. And I will be available anytime to answer any questions that you have on that program. A couple of things on the value added that I did not mention is the applicant must grow or raise the majority of the commodity that the value is going to be added to, and they must own that product from the time it's harvested until it's actually sold on the shelf. So Brennan, I think I will stop right there and answer any questions that I may not have touched on whenever
Okay.
you're ready.
Thank you, Laureate. There's a couple of questions out of the Q&A. Peace Warrior wants to know, what does the government consider as rural?
Okay, so let me just say, for this value added producer grant program, applicants can be located anywhere in the state because they basically are agricultural producers. Now, for purposes of many of our other programs, I'm going to say it like this, any area in the state is considered rural except a town or a county that has more than 50,000 people. Okay. Those urbanizing areas would probably not be eligible either. But if you're in a city, if you're in a town and it has more than 50,000, 99% of the time, it is not going to be considered rural.
Okay.
And Laurette,
Yes, ma'am.
Just to follow up on that, this is Carrie. Where could a producer find out if they're in an area that is 50,000 or less?
So we have a website that they can go to and plug in the address of where the project is, and it will tell them then, Carrie, if it's eligible or ineligible.
Okay, is that the address locator? Because Brennan, we could put that maybe in the
We can put it in the chat, I guess.
yeah, Terrence, if we can put that in the chat, that would be great.
Yes, and that is the address locator. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Another question is, how does housing intersect with the value-added producer grant program? Is there any interaction between the issues of housing and value-added producer grants?
There is no issue. When I mentioned the housing program, I just wanted our listeners to know that not only do we have this division that I work in, rural business, but if there is a need, if someone is interested in building or buying a home, and if their income is very low or moderate, rural development has a housing program that can assist them.
Okay, but those programs are independent of the value-added producer, right?
That is correct.
Okay, okay.
So Laureate, I know you, Laureate, I know you've worked with a bunch of farmers and trying to get these grants. What advice would you give, especially to farmers of color, about A, applying to these programs, and B, just some of the common mistakes that you see when folks apply to the VAPG program?
We certainly encourage persons of color, socially disadvantaged groups to apply. In my presentation, I said that there are priority points for those type applicants. And we certainly would like to see more participate in our program. I'm going to say in Virginia, even though this has been or is a nationally competitive program, Virginia has done well over the years. Sometimes that has been attributable to the fact that there is more money than applications nationwide. But in Virginia, I think we owe a lot of success to that Virginia Fairs group. Because they work with the applicants on the front end to help them assess what is their best revenue option. Particularly if it's a multifaceted farm doing 3 or 4 different things, they can help them determine, is it the cuts of beef that is going to bring you the most money, or is it just selling your locally produced farm vegetables? So we really encourage them to touch base with them. Some of the common mistakes, Brennan, I'm gonna say, piggybacking on a comment that you made earlier, you can't make these programs fit. You have to have a defined goal, task, and project. It is very, very hard just because it's a grant program and you want to make it fit just to get a grant program. It's not going to work. So what I've seen in this value added producer grant program is one of the common mistakes, but that application, those applications typically, don't make the eligibility cut. But it's just finding out about this program at the last minute and putting together an application that you want to make work, and it won't work. I will say, and it's not to scare anyone off, because this grant is doable. It is not really a grant that you can put together in a couple of days, because it requires some the questions, the 4 questions that we score on actually are narrative. So you have to actually answer in depth to, like I said, to make sure that everyone that's reading this will understand it. So I think sometimes not having enough time to put together an application. And then secondly, looking at the word grant and trying to make it work with what you want to do. If I said that right, it may be the other way around, but I think you understand.
Yes, yes. Another question we have is, some folks would like to have the PowerPoint that you refer to. So if you get it to us, we'll be happy to share that. But another question is, if partnering with a nonprofit for the VAPG, are there specific requirements for the nonprofit partner?
Okay, so this VAPG program is the one program.
Some folks would like to have PowerPoint.
The VAPG program is the one program where you do not have to be a nonprofit to make application to us. In partnering with a nonprofit, and nonprofits are not eligible to apply to this program unless they meet the ag producer group. And I may have run over that, but an ag producer group is eligible to make application to this program. Examples of an ag producer group would be your soybean association, your corn growers association, farm bureau. It's basically an entity that is a nonprofit that was designed and set up to represent producers. They would have a list of all of the members. They would have them identified by class. So that is the one instance where a nonprofit can apply to us on behalf of their producers.
Okay. Oh, okay. We have a question. I can answer this question. We were mentioning that these grants are for people of color. But these, while we want to attract more applications from farmers and organizations of color, these grants are open up to anyone. We had a person in the Q&A who says she's a woman, but not a woman of color. I want to know if she was wasting her time listening to this. So, Laura, if you could just explain who's the actual eligible parties for these grants. I just don't want to send a message out. These are only for people of color.
Sure, I will. Anyone meeting the eligibility requirements can apply to this program. You do not have to be of a certain nationality, race, or color. You must be an independent producer, so you must be growing or raising the majority of the commodity that you're going to add value to. So if you are growing grapes, then you must own the majority of those grapes that's going to go into making your product, wine, jams, jellies, etc. You can be an agricultural producer group, which I just explained is typically the only nonprofit entity type that can make applications to us. You can be the farmer or the rancher cooperative, or you can be the majority control producer-based business. So please understand that this program is for anyone that's meeting our eligibility requirements. We do, however, in the scoring of programs, we do award priority points to certain groups. And those groups are socially disadvantaged farmers or ranchers, a beginning farmer or rancher, a veteran farmer or rancher, a small or medium-sized family farm, or a mid-tier value chain. So if speaking specifically to her question, a socially disadvantaged person is one who has traditionally not participated in our programs. So a woman, period, regardless to race, nationality, would fall into that group, Brennan.
Okay, thank you, and I hope that answered the person in the Q&A. So we're about to wrap this section up, Laureate. Is there any closing points you'd like to make about the VAPG? And maybe if you can just give an example of someone that you've worked with that have actually gotten this grant and what they did with it. I think that'd be a nice closing touch.
Okay, we have worked with several different types of entities. We've worked with vineyards, we've worked with wineries. They are continuing the marketing of and processing of their value-added product. I did not go over every detail in this program, so if you're really interested, please give me a call. I just gave the general scenario, but there are a couple of other items in there. This program was not set up to just serve as operating money from year to year. So when those applicants that are applying to us that are already doing this particular value-added venture, then there is a requirement that they be expanding their market, that they're going to a different market, they're marketing to a different clientele. We've actually done, we always talk about food and beverage, but years ago, we did have a project. This lady, she had a alpaca farm, and she was utilizing the waste from the alpaca and cleaning it up, grinding it up, and she was making fertilizer tea bag fertilizer, or her fertilizer was in tea bags, and they were utilized for houseplants. So that was her business. But we've done locally produced food products. We've done dairies that are now making ice cream, cheese, butter. I'm trying to think if we had any. We're big now on the breweries and the cideries. One business actually was growing herbs, and they started making pizza dough from that.
Wow.
Yeah, salsa, tomato grower doing salsa. So it can run the gamut. Brennan, just one closing remark. All federal grants will require, if you're applying for a federal grant, you must have a DUNS number and you must be registered in the system for award management. And I know Brennan, and then we'll talk about that, but this grant, the Rural Energy Grant I discussed, is no exception.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Laureate. I appreciate you taking time to spend with our guests this morning.
Well, thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you.
And Brandon, I did put, for Laura, I did also put information in the chat about the value added producer grants.
Oh, yes, I see that. Thank you, Carrie.
And between Terrence and I, will find the eligibility link as we continue to go on, and we'll post that as well so that you can put your address in, and it'll show you what programs you're eligible for in your particular community. You can just, it's very easy. You just type in your address and it'll show you if you're, if in your area, what USDA programs you're eligible for.
Okay, thank you. And Laureate, a few people have asked how to get in contact with you. Is it okay to share your contact information?
It sure is.
Okay, all right.
It sure is.
We'll go ahead and put that in the chat. Well, once again, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I wish we could clap, but we're in these new days, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next program, which is our Farmers Market Promotion Program, Local Food Promotion Program. However, there's a question I'd like to address in the Q&A. What are the requirements for a small farmer? And Carrie, I don't know if you know this, but as far as I know, if there's no definition, or USDA doesn't provide any definitions of small versus large farms. There's no formal definition. I know USDA defines a farm as any enterprise that makes $1,000 and over in sales is considered a farm, no matter what the size of your farm is. So to the person asking that question, whenever you apply to these programs and you say you're a small farmer, you know, they're not going to ask how much acreage you have and that type of stuff. Has that been your experience, Carrie?
Well, you know, it's actually interesting, Brandon, because when I'm talking with banks, actually, and they define small farms, it's actually thousands of acres, believe it or not. It's multiple hundred of acres. And so when we're talking about small farms, you know, I share with my banker colleagues that we're talking about individuals with as little as 1 acre farms, a quarter of an acre farms. And so when you're looking at, as you stated earlier, when you're looking at what USDA is looking at is when you actually start on your tax returns, they're looking at beginner farmers. It's much easier to define beginner farmers because they're counting the number of years that you're actually doing your tax returns, and you're saying that you made at least what is it, Brandon?
I think it's 1,000. So
$1,000.
But I've always heard 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So unless you're in the thousands of acres, you're still considered a small farm. And while we're in the middle of today, those are questions As you guys are starting to ask these questions between Brandon, Terrence, and I, we'll make sure that we put this information in the chat.
Okay.
Hey,
All right,
Brennan,
we're gonna move on
Brennan,
to our,
Brennan, I'm sorry, this is Laureate. Let me just jump in on that particular question.
sure.
In one of our rural development programs, while an agricultural producer can apply, that agricultural producer can also apply as a rural small business.
Mhm.
And when they apply to us as a rural small business, then we have to make sure they are in a rural area and they are also small. So at that point, we jump over to SBA's table of size standards.
Mhm.
And I believe SBA's table of size standards for our programs now, they have agricultural producers, and I believe it's $1 million and under.
Okay.
So when we're looking at an ag producer that's applying as a rural small business, if their tax returns, their Schedule F show under $1 million, then we can
Mhm.
consider them small. Now, I don't know how that plays into any of the other grants. That's just rural development and that energy
Okay.
program. Okay,
Okay. Thank you, Laureate.
you're welcome.
Okay, and somebody asked about the DUNS number. We're gonna explain that tomorrow. We're gonna explain, Carrie and I are gonna go over all the prerequisites you need to do, but it's, somebody put DOS, it's actually DUNS, D-U-N-S, and we'll explain about what that is and why you need to get it to apply for most of these grants. So the next grant we're gonna talk about is the Farmers Market Promotion Program. And I don't think my panelists for this particular grant program is on with us, but that's okay. I know a lot about this program, having successfully written one. So the Farmers Market Promotion Program is run by Agricultural Marketing Services, which is AMS. And it's designed to fund projects that assist with producer to consumer direct sales. So that is any selling opportunity where that produce or that meat or that agricultural product is going directly from the producer to the consumer, and that consumer's money is going to directly to that producer. So any of those direct sales channels is what this program is designed to support. So some of the stuff that it could do is farmers market development. You can apply for money to help you set up farmers markets, to help you market farmers markets, to help pay you with staffing, to help staff farmers markets, to help pay for things like supplies and bags and that type of stuff. Anything to help develop and help farmers markets grow. It can help with the development of multi-farm CSAs. And for those of you who may not know what a CSA is, it stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And it's basically, for lack of a better way, a subscription program. So a consumer comes to you, let's say you're doing an 8-week CSA, and your shares are going to be $25 a week. So that consumer will come to you and give you $200 if you're doing a 8-week CSA. In return, you provide that consumer with produce from the farm each week, be it a bag or a box, but that's the agreement. So it helps with the development of multi-farm CSAs. So I happen to be a farmer in addition to my other work, and we ran a CSA that had up to 70 members. There are CSAs out there that do several hundred members, but not all farms can grow everything. So for example, our place is pretty small, so we wouldn't grow stuff like corn or peas because we just don't have the land mass. We could actually use FMPP funding to work with other farmers to create a CSA that's comprised of multiple farms as opposed to a single one. You can do roadside stands. You can do agritourism. There's a lot of interest in agritourism now. And that's basically when you have activities on the farm that brings customers out to your farm and you're getting that direct sales money from them. So an example would be, for example, you put a corn maze on your farm, or you do music venues and stuff like that, brings people to your farm to learn about stuff. You can do children's programs.
So that's the Farmers Market Promotion Program. There is 2 different levels, and I haven't seen the funding for the upcoming. This will open up again in the spring. But I think it's up to a single standalone entity could get up to $100,000 to do a standalone project. They also have a technical training and technical assistance segment where if you're looking to train people on how to improve these direct consumer, farmer, producer to consumer sales channels, you can do, you can apply for funds to do technical assistance and training with organizations who are doing this work. I wrote, you see the Georgia Farmers Market Association. Unfortunately, my guest couldn't be with us today, but we wrote a $100,000 grant that provided the startup money for that organization. The Georgia Farmers Market Association was formed to develop, to provide training and technical assistance to market managers, producers, and consumers throughout the state of Georgia, because what was happening as markets started to grow, there was really no one out here training people on how to run an effective and efficient market. So that's what these monies are designed for. Once again, it's a very competitive process. And I'll take any questions that you guys may have on this one. Like I said, I'm sorry I don't have a guest. Yes, it'll be recorded. The sister project, and I used to run a manage a farmers market as well. So the sister program to the FMPP is a local foods promotion program. And that's designed to fund projects that facilitate sales into larger marketing channels, such as institutions and wholesale markets. So unlike the FMPP, where the entire focus is on direct producer to consumer sales, this is looking at how you can get fund projects that help you sell into those largest sales channels. So to be that restaurants, be that institutions, be that supermarkets. So some of the stuff, some of the projects that have been funded are food hub development, such as the Common Market in Georgia, processing facilities here in Georgia in the mountains. There was a food bank that actually got funded to do flash freezing of vegetables. Farmers could bring their vegetables to their facility and have them flash frozen. And value-added product development, which is sort of similar to the project that Laureate just spoke about. And there's 2 components under the local foods promotion program. There's the planning grant, and I won't go into that too much because Laureate did a good job of explaining that planning grant. There's really not much difference other than maybe the funding levels between what the LFPP program does and what VAPG does. And there's also the implementation grant or the working capital grant, which is, once again, is also similar to the what Laureate had mentioned about the VAPG. This has a 25% matching funds requirement, and this was as of the last call, which was last year. I don't know if they made any changes in the program, and all of that could be in kind. So these are 2 programs that really I wish a lot of small producers and NGOs would take a harder look at. I think small farmers and farmers of color need to increasingly own other parts of the supply chain besides just production. So if there's any questions about these, I'll take them.
Brennan?
Yes.
This is not a question, but it's a comment from our Facebook stream. JC Duncan says he has been a reviewer for the grants and he would encourage more persons of color to become reviewers.
Okay, I sure wish he was on. There was a way to get him on. Yeah, I know JC. Yes, we do need reviews, and tomorrow we're going to talk about becoming reviewers for these projects. Thank you, JC. The application process typically opens in the spring. I think it was early April last year, and they generally make the awards by September, October. This year they were a little late. I think they just released the the list of awardees for this year.
And Brandon, I just
Yes.
put up a link to
Mhm.
the grant application. And one of the things that I want to encourage, because I see some questions in reference to whether or not is the farmers market program a match program, and I believe it is. But the other thing is, and as we go through the day, you're
Mhm.
going to see, make sure to check the chat box, because as we talk about these programs, I'm going to put links into the
Okay.
chat box. But a couple of things that I want everyone that's listening and watching to do is go to these links, because number one, you'll see normally what USDA will do is they will list all the projects that have been funded on their website. They will also put the grant application from the previous funding cycle on their website. And
Mhm.
so it's a great opportunity to look at the grant application previously, because they don't change much. But it's also a great opportunity to look to see who was funded. Perhaps there was someone funded in your area. And I know, as someone who's been funded for several USDA grants, we get calls all the time for someone who's interested in applying, just to get our perspective on what we did or how we applied, the good part, the good, bad, the ugly, as we like to say in the grant world. So definitely reach out to other groups. If you're the producer or you're not a nonprofit and you're the benefactor, again, as organizations that are funded, we have to spend the dollars. And so we're getting these grant programs to assist small farmers, beginning farmers, women farmers. You know, that's why we're getting these grants, is to put them out there.
Mhm. Thank you, Carrie. Couple
Brennan?
of questions. Yeah, somebody
Hey,
said
this is
something.
John. Can you hear me?
Hey, John.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to say that McIntosh Seed was a recipient of this grant a few years back, and really was very successful, but it also allowed for us to learn a lot on how development, marketing, and partnership as well too. So part of our grant was to work with the local school district. We partnered with the local, I think 3 or 4 regional health departments. And so we would work with local farmers to gather and help them get their produce out there, and fresh fruits and vegetables, and get to the health department. And I think at that time we were participants that with the health department was able to get vouchers. And so they had vouchers, and we would come and set up 2 days a week, maybe 1 day a week at some locations, and were able to allow for the recipients from the health department of those vouchers to utilize those. We also did senior citizens as well too. So we took fresh and local produce to senior citizens setups as to where they were hosting senior citizen, and so they also had vouchers as well too. And so that was very successful. I think we had a 3-year project in the amount of 300,000.
Okay. Thank you, John. I didn't realize that you guys had received this grant. You want to? I know we have you on the schedule for later, but you want to tell a little bit about McIntosh Seed and the type of work that you guys do?
Well, I think Cheryl's on, so I'm gonna allow her to go.
Okay.
Cheryl.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, so I'm Cheryl Peterson, and I'm the Assistant Managing Director at McIntosh Seed. McIntosh Seed is a nonprofit organization. We're located in Southeast Georgia. We're actually in Darien, Georgia, down on the coast. As John said, we received a farmers market promotional program grant several years ago to develop farmers markets, to create a food system program where we were actually creating mobile markets. Due to us being in a rural area and transportation being a barrier, we were focused on food sovereignty and how to increase food access into our rural community. And so part of our project was to create mobile markets where we would actually take the market into rural areas of our community. As John said, we had a program where we were providing assisted living centers with a mobile market. So we would go to them one day a week. We would go to the senior center, and then we would go to different parts of our community because the market was mobile. Oh, I saw someone just said they're on Sapelo. Good. So that's our area. And so
Okay.
the program was also designed, as John was saying with the vouchers, was to assist those who were receiving SNAP benefits. They were able to use their benefits at the mobile market to buy fresh produce, fresh vegetables. We worked with the farmers to make sure that we were able to have a variety of produce to supply the market. And so we were able to increase food access into our community. And so that was the big premise around our project, was creating mobile farmers market, increasing food access for low wealth residents, partnering with the school. So there was a youth element where we created community gardens and taught the youth about growing food, but then the youth also received employment by managing our farmers markets.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. And this project worked out well for you guys?
Yes, it did. We were actually funded 2 times to do this program. So we were funded for a phase 1 and for a phase 2. We also had a partnership with the city of Darien. So we were able to create a mobile market in our downtown area of Darien. And again, it was to increase that access to food utilizing farmers markets. This program was highlighted. We actually had an opportunity to go to a